Hi everyone, this is Ashlei Williams, and I am again in Romeoville, Illinois at the headquarters of Chicago Tube and Iron, and I'm here with Dr. Donald McNeeley, and we are here for our second installment of the McNeeley View. You can check in with us on a quarterly basis, and you can hear Dr. McNeeley speak about his thoughts on political and economic issues that are affecting all of us. Today we're going to take a look at the legal field, revisiting Dr. McNeeley's column from August. So if we could kind of start broad and you talk about how the legal field works from your perspective and the things that you have observed that are changing in the legal field.
Like many of us, and many of you that have grown up in the industry, you always hear, oh, my wife's a professional, my husband's a professional. And by default, everybody thinks doctors and lawyers. Doctors and lawyers are professionals, and they indeed are. There is a rigorous study and curriculum for those certifications. But when we say that real professions are doctors and lawyers, what do the rest of us do for a living? Is it something less than professional? So I always found that not insulting, but somewhat intriguing. And I think the legal profession for years worked in a bubble where they felt that they were immune from the simple laws of supply and demand. And I think a lot of chatter has been bandied about in the form of the need for a tort reform, as if that is the issue. And while that certainly is an issue worthy of being addressed, I think the issue is more fundamental in that the supply of attorneys exceeds the demand for attorneys, and that's where the problem fundamentally begins.
And there is attention brought to lawsuits and settling disputes in court. And why do you think there is a focus in society on the legal field and its importance and resolving issues in that way?
So historically, we had a situation where two men or two women can meet together and resolve their dispute. There were social norms that allowed for dispute resolution. And through the evolution of society, we ran into a situation where we even coined a new word called hyperlexis. And hyperlexis is defined loosely as the tendency to litigate grievances that perhaps were ignored in previous generations. You know, everybody wasn't a victim. Everybody wasn't always wronged. So I believe that through the popularity of law and the earnings potential in the legal field and this unabated growth of litigation, it attracted many to the profession. And I think that profession felt that they were immune from the laws of supply and demand. So my point is, now having come full circle, I think the supply of attorneys exceeds the demand for attorneys. So the demand has become artificially inflated in the form of frivolous lawsuits. And we've developed ingenious ways to do this. We have contributory negligence, where we're going to sue 15 people, and if you're found to be 4.2% responsible, you will only incur 4.2% of the settlement. But behind that, you have six figures with the legal fees. When we talk about inflation, those are costs that we have to pass along to our customers in the form of an administrative cost that has to be factored into the product. Of particular disdain, I find, is class action suits. Now, I quickly want to always footnote and always be careful to say there are some legitimate lawsuits. There clearly are. People do need to be protected from wrongs. There are some legitimate class action suits, but the majority are not. For example, a law firm or a group of lawyers decides to go after the dairy industry because they fix prices. Well, nobody ought to engage in price fixing, but they're going to represent the U.S. citizens. So at the end of that journey, a law firm generates $150 million worth of legal fees. And how have they protected us? We all get a coupon for 60 cents off our next gallon of milk, provided we can provide a receipt from buying a previous gallon of milk. It's just ridiculous.
And speaking on the subject of supply and demand, what are your thoughts on enrollment in law school and those numbers and how that might be changing?
So as these students pursue their doctorate in jurisprudence, a couple of interesting developments these past few years. There are a number of cases out there where graduates of law school unable to find employment in the legal field have banded together and have filed lawsuits against their alma mater. So we now have students filing suits against the law school for misrepresentation of the job prospects. And I think that's been a very sobering shot across the bow, or of his baseball player, chin music, a high inside fastball, but it certainly has all these law schools resetting how they communicate and market their degrees. So ironically, they're on the receiving end of these lawsuits that are fueled to a great extent by the oversupply of attorneys.
And how do you think, or what is the connection that you draw between what's going on in the legal field and then how that affects our industry?
We all have an administrative cost. That's a percent of our revenue. We all need to sell at a gross margin above the operating expense percent. If we don't do that, you don't have a viable business. So whatever the costs are of running a business, it gets passed along to the consumer, be it industrial or commercial consumer, in the form of their price. So as we continue to evolve in this litigious environment, those are costs that we must mourn, and as a result, we must pass them along. So the more costs that we incur in a defensive mode is money that's not being put into inventory, is money not being put into machinery. If we're going to buy more inventory, we buy it from a manufacturer who needs to employ people to manufacture that product. I need to employ people to do a value added to distribute that product. I need to buy laser machines that create employment, not only at my company, but at the laser machine manufacturer's company. So every dollar spent on legal is a dollar not spent somewhere else. And I would contend that that dollar spent on legal is not creating employment beyond the lawyer.
And to close, just in the few short minutes we've been here chatting, you can see the passion that you have for the industry. You can hear it in your voice. Can you kind of give some background? Where does that passion come from? What drives you to do what you do every day?
So the interesting thing is, if you look at economics, and economics are important to me, and they absolutely drive and fuel a nation's success. I think we're all blessed to either have been born here or somehow immigrated or migrated here. It is a great nation. But I will tell you, Ashley, for a nation to have sustainable wealth, there's only 4 real wealth creations. You need to mine something from the ground, a mineral. You need to build something. You need to grow something like agriculture or farmer, or you need to manufacture something. Real wealth is created from either building, manufacturing, growing, mining. Those are important industries. I think everything else emanates from those industries. By the way, those are the 4 precise markets that your viewership and your readership serve. Everything we do is to those 4 basic markets. For every job created in that particular area, it supports 3.5 service sector jobs. So the attraction of this industry for me is the ability to create employment. Even the Bible said, give a man a fish each for a day, teach a man to fish each for a lifetime. What greater legacy is there to leave the next generation than that of employment? A high-paying manufacturing industrial job. And I would challenge you to tell me an industry that does that better than the PVF industry. So I like creating jobs. I like creating a job in this country. I like being in one of those 4 basic industries. I like being in an industry that services those 4 basic industries. And I like being in an industry with other people that feel the exact same way. That's my optimism.
Well, thank you again for taking the time to speak with us today. If you would like to get a deeper dive into Dr. McNeeley's column this month, you can visit us at www.thewholesaler.com.